In December 2023, Nexon introduced a simple skill that changed the way we play MapleStory forever: Sol Janus. Players were pretty psyched about its release, and so was I, but there was a lingering question in the back of my mind. In a game that has tried so hard to eliminate bots, why would they introduce a skill that basically made farming feel like botting? 6 months prior to Sol Janus' release, Nexon showcased the New Age update, which literally ushered MapleStory into a new age with the 6th job advancement. It was one of the biggest updates in MapleStory history, and many players returned to the game. Most likely feeling pressured to give players another amazing update following New Age, the new director of MapleStory Korea, Kim Chong-sup, unveiled Sol Janus along with new 6th job enhancements during the Dreamer update preview. Soul Janus is a common core, meaning that any class in the game can get access to its power once they reach level 260 and advance to their 6th job. It's a mobbing skill with two different forms, Dawn and Twilight. Dawn is a summon version which allows you to place orbs around the map that hit monsters around it. Twilight, on the other hand, is an area of effect skill that rains down particles in a really large area around your character. Regardless of which version you use, the idea is that the skill makes it so that any class in the game can farm perfect rates with very minimal effort while their character stands in one spot. In most cases, all you have to do is press one button around every 7 seconds so you can proc the skill. A skill like Soul Janus was much needed because the newly added 6th job advancement required players to grind a lot to get the new skill upgrades. During its initial release, it was projected to take over 1,000 hours of grinding to max out all of your skills. And Nexon does plan to release more 6th job skills as time goes on, requiring us to farm more and more. So with all of this grinding we now have to do, we desperately needed a way to make this journey easier so we could sustain longer hours without burning out. But there's a potential dilemma releasing a skill like Sol Janus. Wouldn't making the game this easy dissuade people from playing the game entirely? With such a passive experience, wouldn't people get bored of the game fast? Surely the developers had to weigh the costs, but surprisingly they decided to go all in and give players an experience of MapleStory that almost feels like a mobile game. Now every class in the game can stand in one spot and make perfect rates doing so, and you don't even have to bot. All Nexon asks is that you sit down at your desk and stare at your screen, occasionally pressing a button or two to maintain Janus. It may sound pretty boring, but as with all grindy MMOs, wasn't MapleStory always a pretty boring game to begin with? Well, sure. So as all MMO players do, we partake in activities on the side to make the time pass by. And with Soul Janus now in our kit, multitasking while grinding your MapleStory character got even easier. You see, the experience of playing an MMORPG isn't just about playing the game itself. MMOs are often way too easy, grindy, and repetitive for us to solely focus on the gameplay. If all we did while playing MMOs was stare at our screen in silence with nothing to do on the side, the genre would cease to exist. Even the game developers know this. In 2021, when MapleStory was going through their huge scandal, Nexon held a conference with the game developers where players were invited to attend. One of the players asked the developers what they think users spend the most time doing on the game, and they answered, hunting. The player responded by saying that their answer was only half correct. It's actually watching YouTube/Netflix/dramas while hunting. For as long as I can remember, MapleStory has always been an experience in multitasking. When I first started in 2005, I played the game while chatting with my friends, using the in-game buddy chat or AIM, and I listened to music on the side. Sometimes I'd even have the TV playing in the background so I had something to watch while I grinded. Back in the days though, there was a limit to how much I could multitask. At the time, technology was archaic for today's standards. Computers couldn't handle too many applications at once, and most households definitely didn't have more than one computer monitor. But as time went on, technology got more advanced, giving us more multitasking capabilities. The average household computer became more powerful, laptops were more widespread, and people started to purchase second monitors. Now we're at a point where the average gaming PC can handle a lot. Multiple applications, multiple screens. You can have MapleStory on one monitor and whatever you want on the second monitor, or third monitor, or fourth monitor. Movies, YouTube videos, or even a second game. And that's not even mentioning the background activities you can be partaking in, listening to music or voice chatting with your friends on Discord. Some people even stream their gameplay on Twitch, chatting with their viewers while they play the game and do other things on the side. I knew we had reached the pinnacle of multitasking when I saw one streamer grind her character while telling her Twitch chat that they needed to keep her entertained so she wouldn't get bored. Eventually, they all started watching ASMR soap cutting videos together on stream, so I really guess they needed a palate cleanser. The extreme levels of multitasking may sound maddening. You can even call it brain rot. But as MMO players, we welcome the ability to multitask. Otherwise, like I said earlier, MMORPGs would get boring fast. Even though a lot of people critique the genre for having too many easy games, if MMOs were difficult and they still required thousands of hours of gameplay, they'd be a recipe for burnout. So, in essence, the only way the MMO genre can survive is if they are simple and if they are designed with the ability to multitask in mind. We need to be able to multitask in games like MapleStory for them to maintain our attention. And that's the beauty of Sol Janus. It allows us to do almost anything while we grind. In fact, I wrote the majority of this script while I farmed on my main character. But I wouldn't have been able to do that before Janus's release because farming used to require a lot of hand activity, especially if you wanted to make the best rates. This limited your options for multitasking to simply watching something on the side and or voice chatting with your friends. In a way, I kind of missed the pre-Sol Janus days because the amount of activity required for grinding kept my hands busy and my brain occupied. Now I sometimes find myself getting bored if the content I'm watching on the side gets dull, or I experience writer's block if I'm writing. If whatever I'm doing on the side gets boring, the game in turn gets boring because of its simplistic nature, yet I somehow still find myself motivated to grind. How is it that the game can be this boring while still keeping players motivated to push through? I believe it can be explained in large part by the sunk cost fallacy. In the book Attention Span by psychologist and Professor Gloria Mark, the author explains how games like World of Warcraft leverage the sunk cost trap to keep players hooked. She writes, "Companies design games knowing that people generally don't pull themselves out of sunk cost situations. If a person has already reached a high level, having already invested time, money, and emotional energy into it, they don't want to stop." So even though Sol Janus may seem like too much of an overpowered skill, I believe it was perfectly designed with the sunk cost fallacy in mind. You're only able to access Janus at level 260, and you have to pay a cost to unlock the skill. The cost is pretty big too, 125 Soul Urta fragments. If you're farming the fragments and you average around 12 per hour, that means it's going to take about 10 hours of work to get your skill unlocked. However, if you do the dailies in the game that grant you the 12 daily fragments, it takes around 10 days. If you think about it, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much of a cost. I mean, you already spent quite a bit of time to reach level 260 and get your 6th job advancement. So what's another 10 hours of work? There's more to the story. You have to pay a cost to level up Janus, and you also have to split your resources amongst your other skills. But numbers and calculations aside, here's the thing. By the time you are in a position to obtain Sol Janus, you've already spent so much time, money, and emotional energy in the game that the developers are not worried about you quitting due to boredom. Sure, the game won't be fun on its own as you sit in the same map for hours on end, pressing one button over and over to train your character and farm resources, but you'll still be motivated to grind because of the sunk cost fallacy. Not to mention, MMORPGs are notorious for having a bunch of other features that keep you addicted, but that is a discussion for another video. Plus, with such a lazy grinding experience, the game basically invites itself onto whatever it is that you were already going to do anyways. If you want to watch YouTube videos, catch up on a Netflix series, or listen to those class lectures you've been neglecting, why not do those things while you grind MapleStory since it's so easy to do so? Whatever it is that you want to do, Nexon knows that as their customer, you're the type of person who loves to be in front of a computer screen, whether you're playing a video game or not. And with Soul Janus, it's become easier for MapleStory to become part of that experience. In fact, Nexon loves that you multitask with their game because it makes them a part of your life on the computer. The more MapleStory is ingrained into the fabric of your daily life, the more profit Nexon makes out of you in the long run. So why not sit back, relax, crack open a beer, watch some TV shows, talk to your friends on Discord, and achieve your in-game goals at the same time. When you multitask, the sky's the limit. So far, it may sound awesome. In our productivity-obsessed world, gamers love that they can socialize with friends and consume content while reaching in-game goals at the same time. But we have to ask ourselves, are there any downsides to multitasking like this? In fact, studies show multitasking can decrease productivity and performance in certain aspects of life because multitasking isn't actually what we think it is. We tend to think of multitasking as doing two things at once simultaneously, but in reality, the brain is actually switching back and forth between tasks. In Attention Span, Mark writes, "If I'm talking on the phone and trying to answer emails, I'm really not doing these simultaneously. What I am really doing is switching my attention rapidly between them. In multitasking, the mind allocates attention back and forth to different sources." But when it comes to easy tasks like watching a YouTube video and grinding on MapleStory with our Soul Janus skills, our brains can handle them without any issues. Mark explains, "We also know from years of laboratory research that 2 different tasks can be performed simultaneously with no performance degradation if at least one of the tasks requires little or no effort, such as listening to instrumental music while reading text on your computer." So the good news is that we can multitask by playing video games and consuming content, since these are both very easy activities to partake in without experiencing any issues. But when we try to do multiple demanding tasks at once, that's when we run into problems. Mark continues. Now consider that you are switching among more challenging multiple tasks, such as texting, updating your CV, searching on the internet, checking email, and answering phone calls. We can assume that more cognitive resources are being expended to navigate between these different tasks compared to, say, just talking on the phone while walking, because we can walk automatically without much thought. So far, this shouldn't sound too scary because we're not concerned with performance and productivity when it comes to grinding on MapleStory. We mainly multitask because it helps us pass the time and take our minds off of the excruciatingly boring grind. Plus, even Professor Mark confirms that partaking in rote or mindless activities like scrolling on social media or playing a simple video game can be intentional activities that you can partake in to help you relax and restore your cognitive resources if you do them in moderation. She writes, "There is a reason why people are drawn to such rote activity. In short, we found empirically in our studies that it makes people happy. We are happiest when we use our attention for easy, engaging activity that is not challenging and stressful. Letting our minds wander while taking breaks with easy tasks, both online and in the physical world, helps us replenish our scarce cognitive resources, and with more resources, we are better able to be productive." As a gamer, hearing this is probably making you very excited. You mean playing video games and drowning myself in content is going to make me more productive? Well, it could, but Professor Mark says that these activities need to be done intentionally and in moderation. And I'm sure we all know that as MMO gamers, we hardly do anything in moderation. In fact, I'm sure most of us can attest to the fact that heavily immersing yourself in an MMORPG can actually have an extremely negative effect on our lives. Decreased productivity, sacrificed sleep, and less motivation for real-life goals. Why is that? I believe there are many reasons for this because MMORPGs are designed to be highly addictive. However, when it comes to gaming and multitasking specifically, it's easy for time to pass by without our conscious awareness. Professor Mark says that rote activities are easy and can absorb our attention, and that when we are highly engaged in digital activities that are mechanical and repetitive, we can do so for hours each day without feeling expended. In other words, your brain can handle long grind sessions because you're not using a lot of mental energy to do so. The problem, though, is that the grind in MMORPGs is often super boring. I don't know anyone who doesn't multitask and plays MapleStory by itself in total silence. And when your mind is bored, you have so many spare attentional resources in your brain that you can't help but think about how much time is left before the activity is over and how slowly it is passing. That's why we multitask in MMORPGs like MapleStory by doing something on the side to help pass the time. It's also important to note that the content you partake in on your second monitor, YouTube videos, Netflix series, other games, are also designed with their own addictive qualities that make you want to keep consuming. I know personally that I can spend hours on YouTube without getting bored because there's so much great content on there, so much to laugh at, so much to learn. And since we're often watching content while playing games, it's hard to get bored or tired of what you're doing because you're stimulated in so many different directions. You're working toward your in-game goals, you're being entertained while consuming content, you're voice chatting with friends, and you don't even have to spend much mental energy to keep doing what you're doing, to keep having fun. So why would you stop and take a break? But at the end of the day, we're smart people. I think we all know that breaks are important and that we should take them every so often. But it's hard to listen to those good thoughts when we're in the zone of multitasking. When we multitask, so many things are consuming our attentional resources that it becomes hard to observe our own thoughts, much less take action on them. The thing about these thoughts, though, is that they never really go away. Even while you're in the middle of multitasking, your brain shouts at you, "Take a break," but before you get a chance to acknowledge the thought and potentially do something about it, all the shiny things in front of you draw your attention back in. Eventually, hours go by as you sit in front of the computer screen, and then you wonder what happened to all the time. This is partly why being an MMO gamer can have negative effects on your life. You spend so much time in the flow of gaming and multitasking that you sacrifice productivity, goals, self-care, and sleep, even though you know what you're doing is unhealthy. It seems like the only time you truly take a break from the computer is when your body is absolutely begging for something like a bathroom break. But even when you go to the bathroom, what do? You most likely check the notifications on your phone as you walk to the bathroom, and then you scroll through social media as you sit on the toilet. In other words, you continue to multitask. I believe that after years of multitasking, we've conditioned ourselves to think that what we are doing is perfectly normal, that it's okay to constantly consume content while we partake in other activities. Like I said before, I was multitasking online when I started playing MapleStory in 2005, and it slowly became a habit to multitask even outside of my gaming sessions. When I walked to class, I scrolled through my phone while listening to something on my headphones. When I took showers, I blasted music on my Bluetooth speaker. Even when I would go to sleep at night, I had my phone or laptop with me to fill the silence because silence started to feel uncomfortable. What I learned recently, though, is that silence is actually a really good thing for us. When we have a moment of silence, yes, we may get negative thoughts and think about all the problems we have in life. So people's first instinct to deal with that stress is to distract themselves by using some form of technology. And multitasking on technology is a perfect way to be avoidant with yourself because the extreme amounts of stimulation and pleasure you get from it takes away any chance that your mind will dwell on your problems. However, when you always avoid your thoughts instead of dealing with them, you never give yourself the opportunity to better your life. A lot of people think negative thoughts are a reflection of their negative life, but they're not. Our lives are actually quite blessed if you really take some time to think about it, even if we do have problems. You are not your thoughts, as the meditation hippies say. Instead, I've come to realize that negative thoughts during these silent moments are a good thing. It's my brain telling me, hey, we have a problem, and now that we have a moment of silence together, let's think of some solutions so we can better our lives. Negative thoughts have become invitations for me to better my life in some way, shape, or form, but you can only really process those negative thoughts if you give yourself the space to focus. When you constantly drown out any thoughts you have by multitasking, you never give yourself the opportunity to come up with creative solutions to the problems you have in life. And by continually avoiding your problems through content consumption, video games, and constant multitasking simulation, the list of problems grows bigger and bigger over time until you feel so overwhelmed that you just can't take it anymore. You crack. That's what happened to me. I cracked. I'm sure many of you subscribers know that I took a break from MapleStory last year. On that break, I realized I needed to stop consuming and multitasking so much. I learned that it's okay to cook dinner and wash the dishes without a podcast playing in the background. That it's okay to take a dump without scrolling on my phone. That it's okay to shower without music playing and give myself the opportunity to just think. They call them shower thoughts for a reason. Once I gave myself those moments of silence and mental space to process my thoughts, I noticed myself achieving my goals almost naturally, confronting my issues and healing the scars I had in my life. And as I worked through these life situations, I began to form a relationship with myself that I have been avoiding for many, many years. It feels nice, and it feels beautiful to be in a loving relationship with yourself. But like almost all MMO players who quit their game of choice, I found myself coming back to the game. You can go ahead and psychoanalyze me in the comments below. And yes, I do multitask when I play, but I don't let it get out of hand. Now that I give myself moments of silence throughout my day, away from the banes of multitasking and constant stimulation, I'm able to log in the game with that intentionality and moderation mindset that Professor Mark talks about. I've realized that gaming is a great way to relax, unwind, and blow off some steam. It's even backed by science, and I'm grateful that MapleStory's Soul Janus makes the experience so much more relaxing. But I don't need to spend hours on end to get those cognitive restoring effects. 30 minutes here and there is all I need sometimes, and it feels good to boot up the game knowing that I'm in control. If you made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you personally for watching. I spent the past year really working on my attention span and my addiction to technology and the internet, and now I would like to help others out there who may be struggling with a similar issue by starting some sort of community or program that you can partake in. So if you feel like you are dealing with an overconsumption problem when it comes to gaming, the internet, or social media, there's a link to a survey in the description of this video that I welcome you to fill out. Later, Binch.